Remember the 7 human souls? You know, kindness, justice, bravery, integrity, patience, perseverance, and determination? Well, those never stop being a thing, and they tie into Deltarune in a very interesting way. Looking back on everything from chapters 1 to 3, you notice that the most important figures in the game tend to line up with these attributes, and the threads connecting them are defined through color. Ralsei is a character defined by kindness, servitude, generally being nice, and he's green. Chris is incredibly patient, often letting things play out, letting you do whatever you think you need to do to get out of the Dark World, and only acting on their own accord whenever they deem it necessary. And there's Cyan. Noelle is heavily tied to themes about violence and justice. An entire segment of the game having to do with the perversion and the misuse of justice includes the justice motif from Your Best Nightmare, and requires Noelle to progress, and she's yellow. Then we get to Susie, the purple one, who this entire time has been overcoming adversity, climbing over hurdles, breaking through walls, spitting on the concept of not being able to do something, and keeping hope in her heart when things look their bleakest. Susie is defined by hope, yes, but she's also defined by something else. If you were to boil her down to one word, it wouldn't be hope. It would be perseverance. In the opening moments of Chapter 4, Susie laments having to go to church. I'm right there with her, that place fucking sucks. But she decides to grin and bear it for the sake of finding out how to get inside the shelter and save Undyne, and also the world. You get the opportunity to walk around the house a bit more, getting Susie's thoughts on stuff, and here's a neat bit of characterization I noticed. If you interact with the bloodstain on the corner, Susie at first looks horrified, but then she goes on about how to properly clean a bloodstain, and it becomes very clear the giant patches of blood are kinda normal to her. I love that, actually. I love that she's not actually scared at the appearance of blood on someone's floor. You ever had a really bad nosebleed? You'll make a white towel look like bloody murder. You will magnetize the damn thing with how much iron you let out. I'm going over the seemingly insignificant moment because there's a lot of them in Chapter 4. This is the Susie chapter, and the one that made me start making these videos at all. We get another outside the main temple, which informs us of why she's not particularly into church. The churches she's been to were your typical deal, which means they were horrible and tended to focus on the "you will never be good enough" parts of the faith. And they picked on Susie specifically for not instantly getting something right. She notices a distinct lack of venom in this room, though, even calling this place tolerant. And there's juice. I mean, you can't argue with juice. So she'll stick around a bit longer. After church, she asks to come over to Noelle's place, leaves, and then you can go do all sorts of cute shit. When you go into the school Dark World, Susie decides to see what Ralsei's room looks like. When she dashes into his room and finds it completely barren, she's at a loss. She knew that it was bad, but she didn't know that it was this bad. This goes beyond just regular selflessness. This speaks to an active loathing of the self. She doesn't know why he feels like this, and she decides she doesn't need to. She says that him feeling like he matters so little that he shouldn't get a room in his own goddamn house is the stupidest thing in the world. Especially when we're talking about Ralsei. Not only does he deserve basic fucking living arrangements, he deserves the whole entire world. So, Susie decides that she'll fill up his room with stuff. Like every other wall she's been presented, she will break through Ralsei's self-loathing no matter what. She will make him like himself, and she's already making pretty good stride on that. Anyway, before that happens, we get to see Chris, Susie, and Ralsei have a tea party, where Susie talks about how it's nice that she doesn't have to be in survival mode all the time. It's like I touched on last time, she's been given the power to be whoever she wants to be, and who she wants to be is, well, whoever she is when she's not putting up a front. She's finding her footing, and she's got a good support system. After that, they hit up Metaton, give away Tenna, and head over to Noelle's, wherein Susie furthers her track record of muscling her friends into being the best versions of themselves they can possibly be. While Chris drinks like Toriel after one too many interactions with Asgore, man, the apple really does not fall far from the tree, does it? Susie and Noelle continue to be fucking adorable with one another. The dialogue here feels really organic, like you're spectating someone's life, which you are. Anyway, while I won't write 16 more paragraphs about it, it's still nice to see her loving life. After Carol comes in and violently invokes her homophobia, they dip and head over to the church where, oh god fucking damn it, Des! Usually Susie's really gung-ho about Dark World shenanigans, but this is church. On church day. Presumably with people inside. The knight just keeps endangering people's lives, smiles about it, and then runs away. Pissed off and ready to kick bubblegum and chew ass, she delves inside. They take note of how odd the place is, get their asses beat, and meet up with Ralsei, who's acting weird. Very, very weird. He seems eager for them to get a move on, and isn't explaining why. As you walk through the Dark Sanctuary, it immediately marks itself with a single word. If you were to reduce it down to one phrase, it would be respect. This is the most important Dark World we've seen so far, because it's explicitly about the prophecy. It's the Dark World with the most relation to the existence of the Dark and Light world's dichotomy. It looks so serious that our main trio doesn't even look like they belong here. As they pass glass tapestries, Susie takes note of how the prophecy looks a bit different from what Ralsei described. He skirts around this by stating he gave more of a summary, but if you have eyes, you can tell that he's hiding something. Fuck, when is he ever not hiding something? We'll talk about that in a bit. They crouch to the Dark World a bit more, finding some sort of strange shadowy boogin man, and then Bruce Johnson? Meet Gerson Boom, the funniest man over the age of 60 that you will ever meet. And the kind of guy who's too old to have problems with anyone. Also, he's a zombie. See, Gerson does something really interesting when he meets Susie. In the Undertale universe, he served as a sort of role model for Undyne. By way of being so impossibly himself, he inspired her to be a fierce warrior. When the Hammer of Justice went out of commission, the Spear of Justice continued its legacy, the crushing force of one paving the way for the piercing force of another. Gerson sadly died before he could influence Undyne in this universe, but in his reanimated state, he can still influence another young hero. We first see this when he asks Susie to grab him a book. She declines at first, and Ralsei offers to help, but when Gerson asks her once more, she begrudgingly picks it out for him. Given that the book is the only thing out of place in this shot, and Gerson is more perceptive than he lets on, I think he figured out the puzzle and tricked her into solving it as a test. She was rude to him at first, but quickly showed herself to be the kind to do good, even if it inconveniences her a bit. In addition to being the king of just being able to do that, he's also the kind of vague mentor that messes with you because it's funny, a la Phoenix Wright in Apollo Justice. He fucks with you, but by the end of it, your life is marginally better. A good example of this is when he leads the gang all over Hell's Half Acre, prompting Susie to go, you know what, we are absolutely never visiting your study, old man. And then he's like, alright, and the very next room is his study. Susie keeps getting absolutely clowned on by this old man, and it's great. The reason she's so untrustworthy of this guy is because, well, multiple adults have burned her in the past, so she's preemptively hostile to possible threats. After she proves himself to be the opposite of a threat, though, she's hostile because of his annoying old man shtick. But he's already cemented himself in her mind as not a threat, and soon enough, she'll probably be laughing about his aforementioned old man shtick. After a few more puzzles, Susie starts questioning Ralsei on why he didn't tell us the answer. I mean, if he knows the whole thing, he probably should have said so, right? And then he says it's better if he doesn't say anything. And when she bluntly asks him why, he deflects by accidentally Wile E. Coyoteing them off a bookshelf. Didn't mention it earlier, but when Susie and Chris first fell into the Dark World, she attempted to heal Chris, but then Ralsei came in and told her not to try to help on her own. And here, he's just healed Chris again after Susie tried once more to help. The description for her healing magic now says, it seems the user doesn't want to use this spell. Ralsei isn't trying to be mean here, but he's also not explaining just why he's so focused on being the one to heal everyone. In Chapter 4, he's a lot more servile, literally stating by the end of it that he just wants to do everything for them. But Susie doesn't know that, so she's just led to assume that he's doing it because she's worse at healing than he is. Not to say that he's flaunting his heightened capabilities, but that because she is objectively worse at healing, even if she likes doing it, and even if it makes sense that she wouldn't be a master from the get-go, she shouldn't try. You can see how this sends her back into that spiral I keep talking about. Her consideration of remaining the Susie hometown knows versus the Susie that she is. She says she ought to stick to the magic that hurts because that's what she's good at. That's what keeps being reinforced by literally everyone but her best friends. And, like with every other instance of her starting up at her self-loathing spiral again, someone comes around to pull her out of it. Gerson, after she tells him this, decides to call her a coward. Not to insult her for the sake of insulting her, but to do what he does best. Light a fire in people. He pisses her off into trying to heal a prick he got on his finger, and when she casts it, he conveniently drops his letter, which just so happens to make the green sparkly fly into and heal Jackenstein. New Deltarune headcanon, the only reason Gerson's dead in this world is because he's a pro 5D chess player and would have ended the game by Chapter 1. The man simultaneously motivated Susie, made her heal up the himbo, cemented himself in Susie's head as the funny old man who's great at messing with you, but actually really loves you, and did it all while fucking with people for a larf. I love this 78-year-old turtle. Now armed with evidence that her healing isn't completely fucking useless, she's feeling a lot better about herself. I feel like this, again, feeds into the magic metaphor stuff I keep yammering on about. Ralsei has always been better at being nice because he's a naturally nice person, whereas Susie, for the longest time, had to drive people away by being mean. So being nice is hard for her. She still yells a bit at Noelle in Chapter 2, but the awkwardness of their interactions completely dissipates once they get the conversation going in Chapter 4. She's getting better at being kind. This is reflected on how the TP cost for her OK heal costs less and less the more she uses it. I have some real-world experience in this. After a while, I started randomly complimenting people on the street whenever I liked their look. It was hard at first, but once you get into the groove of being nice, it becomes that much easier. Same thing with my friends. It took me a very long, very uncomfortable time to start openly saying I love you to all of my friends. And even now, it's still something I have to lightly force myself to do. But like, I do love them, and they should know that. And it makes you feel good because it's nice to be nice. Anyway, later on they have some tea, where, like with all of Susie's budding friendships, she decides that the old man is okay. Maybe even alright. Possibly even a little cool. I mean, you'd like it if Bruce Johnson made you tea. Something I noticed here is that Susie's getting her first taste of what it's like to have a good parental figure in her life. Arguably, you could claim that Toriel was the first, but I think it's more apparent with Gerson. See, Susie's parents are bad. Bad enough for her to not tell them that she's staying over at Chris's house, and bad enough for her to not even tell them where she is. And given everything else, there's only 3 good adults in her life at this point, and she only really trusts 2 of them. And Gerson is one of those old people. The kind to treat everyone as his own. The kind of guy who you'd spend one afternoon with and come away with the feeling that you've known him your whole life. So yeah, Susie's got a grandpa now. Later on, she even says that he's the first person to ever teach her something without making her feel like an idiot. After writing down the notes on the wall, she notices Chris is hesitating to play. They're doing this for 2 reasons. 1, you don't know how to play piano, and 2, you're here at all. See, I subscribe to the theory that Chris doesn't play piano for anyone but their most favorite people. That's why they always just slam a couple of keys whenever you're around. They don't know you, and they consider you an annoyance at best and literally Satan at worst. But Susie is just special enough for them to play, despite your presence. It shows how much they've grown to matter to one another in just 3 days. Anyway, with that, the door is open and they're free to leave. That is, if they didn't have a cool axe thing to find. Once you play a cool tune and head on over, Gerson's like, "Hey, this is a shop, not a charity," and offers her a trade. 1 haircut for 1 justice axe. She tries, and he dodges. And it becomes apparent to anyone who's been paying attention thus far that he is yet again fucking with her. By this point, he's seen her potential, and now he wants to see if she has what it takes to take the axe. Something I haven't touched on at all is Father Alvin, Gerson's son. Alvin loved his father and wants to follow in his footsteps as best he can. He wants to preserve his legacy as a good preacher and a good teacher. Gerson, however, didn't go to church a lot. Not because he didn't like his son, but because he wanted Alvin to live his own life instead of focusing on his. This is evidenced by Susie's letter to Alvin halfway through the game. And that's Gerson's core philosophy. Living your own life and writing your own story. You know what I think the Justice Axe is? Even though it doesn't fit with Susie's, for lack of a better term, brush modus, I think it's Gerson's pen. And I think this fight is his final test for her. To prompt her to write her own stories and have the Justice Axe serve as a reminder to always, always, always do that. We can see that in his boss fight. It literally begins with Susie stating that the prophecy says she's a hero. He doesn't care for this and basically goes, yeah, how about the twist? And then he pulls out the fucking green soul. Sure, the book says you're a hero, but that's because you have to be heroic. You need to be strong enough to face danger head on. Now, seeing as you're probably pretty rusty from not playing Undertale for years, you probably took a little damage. So you try to heal and... Yeah, the pre-established rules don't apply here. Don't you remember, Gerson's the least likely person to follow a script. You're in his house now, and he keeps pulling out surprises. Surprises you can work around, but surprises nonetheless. Octadirectional arrows, a rude buster volley, the only healing coming from when you've raised your TP just enough. The hits getting softer and softer as you get weaker and weaker, spinning turtle shells. The rules have been thoroughly defenestrated in favor of Gerson's challenge. While you fight, he tells you about his book, Lord of the Hammer. Being based on the prophecy, it lines up to how the game has gone so far. When he goes over chapter 6, he states that the author never wrote it, that the pen laid there for the youth, by which he means Alvin, to write the next page, but he never did. But now that Susie's here, maybe she can. He says he sees a story burning in her. And I think this is because, similar to himself, she's a rule breaker. I mean, look at Gerson, he's a lightener, he's a darkener, he's dead, he's alive, he completely reworked the battle system, he only exists in one specific dark world, he's the only secret boss to not go insane with the Shadow Crystal. By all accounts, he should not be here, but he is. And by this point, you know how much of a rule breaker Susie is. I think she's still the only character to ever have been a party member and an enemy. Gerson sees Susie as the dragon, defeated in chapter 1. In this way, Susie was your first ever recruit. He asks her how she thinks, no, how she wants the story to end. And she tells him she doesn't want it to end. The good times should just go on forever. He laughs. As the story approaches its final pages, she's chosen to keep it going. He tells her that there is a way to keep it going, to reject the darkness of the book's back cover, a white pen called Hope. The battle closes with yet another one of Susie's ideas, Trick the Trickster. When she finally wins, after your no doubt 80th attempt, he says what's confirmed something I've believed ever since. See, I wasn't just flying by the seat of my pants when I said the color of each party member corresponds to the soul colors. Gerson specifically calls out her perseverance. Her getting better and better each time she played. Better and better with each cast of her healing magic. He wants her to keep trying. No matter what life throws at her, no matter how many roadblocks she faces, keep going. Practice anything enough times and it comes easily. Punch a wall enough times and it comes down. Like last time, the crushing force of one has paved the way for the cleaving force of another. The Justice Axe comes with no powers. It only raises your attack, and it comes with a tagline that you had to become stronger to get it. I won't go into the dual, triple, and quadruple meanings present all throughout Deltarune's language, but I will note how this version of becoming stronger involved no violence whatsoever. After the fight, Gerson gives them one more piece of wisdom pertaining to stories. Writing continuations is one thing, but you can also rewrite the story entirely. entirely. Dragon Blazers was a retelling of Lord of the Hammer, and Lord of the Hammer was a retelling of the prophecy. And in each retelling, things were changed. People got upset, but it's precisely because the rewrite was interesting enough for them to get upset with. You know, this is probably why people just cannot stop making Pinocchio movies. He doesn't necessarily believe Susie is a hero, but that isn't because he doesn't like her. He just doesn't believe in the prophecy 100%. It is just a story after all, and whatever she ends up being, she'll be great. As they prepare to leave, Gerson tells Susie to take a letter up for him. Susie's characterized this whole excursion as a dream, and Gerson has interpreted this as Susie's dream. He knows he's dead, and he doesn't know exactly why he's been brought back inside some random girl's dream. But he decided he'd make the most of it in the only way he knew how, by being the biggest fucking troll in Toby Fox's entire ludography. He cheats the nature of the Dark World by sending Susie back with the memory of the letter, and telling her to bring it to Paige in the Light World. They return to where they were, and chase the knight all the way up until the Great Door, which they shut and lock. There's still a fountain to seal though, so they can't focus on that now. When they seal the fountain, upon discovering there's yet another Dark World in the Inner Temple, you begin looking for clues. Susie wonders where the old man is, excited to meet another friend who she can see outside the Dark World. And then she finds his ashes. She realizes that he was a darkener made from the dust of a lightener. She looks sad for a moment, but then laughs. Only he could get her that good. This feels like a good place to put this. The plaque in Alvin's office recontextualizes Susie's turn to hopefulness. See, Toriel is a devout member of the church, and as such, would probably have been told this quote from the former pastor. Hope comes to those who believe, and for those that cannot, may our hope shine so brightly that they too may keep shelter from the dark. And Toriel took that into her first major encounter with Susie. Her ironclad belief in hoping against hope that everything would be okay had at first shielded Susie from sinking further into hopelessness, and gave her the will to hope as well, which in turn encouraged her to persevere. Those two things are woven into every part of Deltarune, but like I said before, they are most prominent in her. In this part of the game, we can also see the piano story. This ties into her anxieties and subsequent shaking off of said anxieties about healing magic. On a more broad scale, Susie was always judged for her lack of skills, and summarily shamed for attempting to gain said skills. Like we touched on before, this was a part of her bad reputation. People can't ever let you not be the bad kid who no one likes, so they enforce that narrative as much as they shame you for it. And that coincided with her mind's broken logic of, I'm not good at this, someone else is better, I should stick to hurting people and let the good people be good at things I'm not good at. But that was then. This is now, after she's broken through that attitude. So she tells Chris that if she knew they played piano a week ago, she'd hate them for it. But now, even despite her lack of skills, all she wants to do is hear them play. And this is the core of Susie. Beyond the suit of thorns, beyond the tough exterior, beyond the jokey barbs, beyond the awkwardness, beyond the words left unsaid, beneath everything lies an incredibly loving girl who, given the right circumstances, isn't afraid to say it out loud. She does walk this back a bit, prompting a dialogue option. The sweetest option here is to say, if you play too. Usually she would laugh and make a joke, but here she's just like, yeah, that sounds nice. Seeing nothing around, your only real recourse is to come back and try again tomorrow, i.e. in Chapter 5. But Susie has another idea. She thinks she knows how to open the door. Well, okay, she's not totally sure of that, but she just really wants to see Gerson again. So even though it seems highly counterproductive, and even though it's incredibly dangerous, and even though the chapter is almost over and you're about ready to close the book, she decides they should open up a Dark World. Something I need to talk about briefly is Chris's weapon. Trust me, I'm going somewhere with this. Chris's weapons are almost always writing utensils, and they're usually depicted in the Dark World as wielding a sword. Pen is mightier than the sword, har har har. Anyway, you can choose to either make Chris attack enemies or spare them throughout the whole game. On a more meta level, I like to see these choices as you holding the pen and reading Deltarune like a book. You can choose to scratch out entire paragraphs, or you can choose to let them sit there unbothered. In this world, the pen effectively is the sword, so it would make sense if the sword was also the pen. Following Gerson's words, she stares the end of the book in its face, determined to rise above, to not let it end here. She clutches Chris's knife, the fate of the story in her hands and her hands only, and plunges it into the earth. The bright white light of hope floods the room. A new dark fountain made. The story continues. From the get-go, something's weird. Susie says so herself. The colors are off, definitely off. Music is backwards, and the fountain, in contrast to every fountain before, is flowing downward. See, I actually made a Tumblr post that I think explains the colors just a tear. When I was younger, I had an Xbox 360, and I loved playing Portal 2. One day, I accidentally kicked it or something, and some cables at the back came loose. I redid them, and to my bewilderment, the game ran fine, but the colors were off. The cyan was more of an indigo, and the orange was more of a limey yellow. I realized later on that the colors were weird because I accidentally fucked up the AV cables when I put them back in, leading me to the only logical conclusion for the color of Susie's Dark World. That being, she fucked up the AV cables of her Dark World while she was making it, which is totally a thing Susie would do. I wrote that as a joke, but no, it's actually the most true statement here. You think I knew how to plug AV cables in back then? No! And Susie didn't know what she was doing when she was making a Dark World either. She focused very briefly on what she wanted, which was a Dark World where she could see the old man again. That's where the determination came from. Everything else, though, she didn't think about. Let's contrast that with a Dark World that executes its goal perfectly, the TV world. It was made to be a distraction, and it distracted the lighters long enough to get the Night Over to come and kidnap Undyne. It is one of the most put together Dark Worlds in the entire game. This, though, it sorta just has to work with what it's been given. This new addendum is vague, it's hazy, it doesn't quite fit. It's trying to make sense of itself when the new author has just written, and then they opened up another fountain to find the old man. This is like the non-evil version of an AI trying to expand upon a text prompt. And then we hear it. One of the greatest songs in this entire chapter, and also one of the ones that shouldn't be as great as it is. Brief tangent, I have a webcomic which I'm releasing pages for, painfully slowly, sorry about that. And for some of those pages, I like to animate a little. And for some of those animations, I make music, and to make that music, I use beatbox. I'm intimately familiar with the process of slapping down notes and tweaking it until it just works, and then continuing. And to me, that's what the Second Sanctuary sounds like. It sounds like Susie opened up a music program with the only direction for the song in her head being Dark World music, and started slapping down notes. Maybe some pixel sounds over here, some strings there, definitely a drum beat, funky wee-woo sounds over here, and bam, Dark World music. This is why I love this song so much. I see myself in it quite a bit. I see Susie, lacking practically any musical skill, doing what she always does when it comes to music. Throwing shit together until it just works. And Second Sanctuary does just work. Aside from maybe the Third Sanctuary, it is the most just work song in the entire OST. Something interesting about the Second Sanctuary is that it is Susie's Dark World, but it also isn't. A philosopher tells you that this is just the other side as viewed from the lens of someone other than the knight. It's the story quite literally being viewed in a different light. Speaking of viewing stories, later on Susie sees something that kind of flies in the face of what Gerson said earlier. She sees a prophecy which she assumes is about her and gets really excited about it. It says she has hope crossing her heart, in a place where words tend to always pop back up no matter how many times you rip out the pages. And it's understandable that she would do this. Here's a question for you, fandom-brained bumpersnatch. Don't you remember being in middle school, consuming only content about 10 to 15-year-olds being the special, and then freaking the fuck out, thinking that you too, lonely in your desk, might just be one of the special kids too, wishing desperately to be some kind of hero? That's what Susie's feeling right now. And it's compounded on by the fact that she's gone from never being picked for anything to being the hero of legend in her town's religion. Yeah, rewriting stories is cool. You know what's cooler? Being a prophesied hero from the fucking holy text. As they get to Gerson's study, it becomes immediately obvious that they are not going to find him. Sad as it is, you keep going forward, trailing behind the suit of armor. When it attacks Susie, she's hesitant to attack back. Surely this is another lesson, right? Another test, it has to be. But it's not. She keeps asking him why he doesn't remember her, why he's doing this at all. And his lack of an answer scares her. And as the suit primes to deal a lethal blow, Chris comes to her aid. If you try and attack the old man, she refuses, and she actively stops you from attacking as well. This is a far cry from her previous behavior, and it shows just how much Gerson means to her. She tries to jog his memory by throwing out her healing spell, but in doing so, she sees it's just a suit of armor. And then Ralsei comes to her aid. He tells her that that wasn't him, that darkness like Gerson can only appear in very specific darkness, and that he can't ever come to their castle town. He tells her she can never see him again, and not knowing how else to break it to her, he does it with a smile. And all of this, all of everything, straight up triggers her. She starts screaming at him about his complete lack of communication. First, she can't stay in the Dark World forever because that will end the world. Then nothing is real and it basically doesn't matter. And now her only positive adult influence is gone forever with no chance of coming back, and he knew all along. He deliberately chose not to tell her all of the details going in, and it's ate away at her each time it's happened because, as stated before, she hates it when people don't tell her things. And after so many instances of somebody who is supposed to be her friend seemingly glancing at the concept of telling her the truth and turning up his nose, she has fucking had it. She literally roars at him that if he knows so much, if he knows how it all goes, if he has information that would save her from wasting her time, her hope, her energy, then he should just fucking tell them. And given that this is the first time any of his friends have been openly angry with him, he breaks down. He tells her that he knows a lot of things, but he never told her not because he didn't care, but because he didn't know when to say them, and he didn't want to hurt her, and he doesn't want to know, but he does. Ralsei is a person who tries to seem like he's always on top of things, but in reality he's just a kid with arcane knowledge. He doesn't know what he's doing. This is the first time he's ever had friends, so of course he'd want to keep them safe from, well, everything, including knowledge that would hurt them. He interprets keeping them safe as keeping them ignorant of the horrors. We don't know what he knows, but it's very clearly information that writhes through his heart like an earthworm made of razor wire. It kills him to know so much about the prophecy, and he says it himself. Knowing so much hurts. And if anyone's going to hurt, it should be the least important person in his life, himself. Susie identifies this as the reason for his odd behavior today. He's trying to keep them from seeing the ending of the prophecy because he thinks it would cut them too deeply. And part of this is because he doesn't want to say so much that it freaks them out, to know so much that it's scary. And seeing how horrified he is at the thought of them seeing the finale, she backs off. She's not really angry anymore because, while she doesn't have all the information she wants, she sees that trying to get it would absolutely shatter him. She knows enough to know to not press him. What she can do, though, is what she's good at. She tells him he can go ahead when he needs to, but they're still an unbreakable team. Ralsei laughs, wipes his tears, and vows to be more honest. He can't say everything, but he can say some things. They seal the second fountain and open the door to the inner sanctum. After confronting the knight, they face their strongest enemy to date. A Titan, described by Ralsei as the fear of the dark. Susie tries to talk a big game, but not many people can be brave against the original fear, so they fight. And right when it looks like they're about to win, the Titan begins to regenerate. Ralsei doesn't know how to stop it, so he supposes that they'll just keep fighting. And then out of nowhere, Gerson rips himself from the grave again to beat ass. Bro felt a disturbance in the force and said, "Aight, let's throw hands!" A new act has appeared, Duel Buster. This one really shows what I'm talking about when I say Susie embodies perseverance. Here's the most fearful force on Earth, the original fear of the unknown staring her in the face, and she, with help from her friends, has the courage, the determination, the perseverant force of will to beat the ever-loving shit out of him. And it works more than anything else has so far, but it's not enough. You know what is enough though? Fucking Susie's idea! And like fucking always, Susie's idea absolutely trounces the Titan. This absolute random bullshit ghost stunt wins without question. After the fight, in looking for Gerson, Susie accidentally comes upon the final prophecy. The thing Ralsei has been so deathly terrified of this entire time. We don't know what it was, but I'm almost certain that it was another roadblock. Another thing in her way, and something threatening her friend specifically. And in response, she laughs. Really? That's what the big, shocking ending was? Something else trying to take me away from you? She's had to deal with so many things threatening her, so many things trying to break her, trying to erode her sense of hope, and her sense of love. And by this point, she's grown so accustomed to these threats being so utterly ineffectual, that she can't help but laugh. If she saw this 3 days ago, she'd be devastated. Now, nothing can stop her. Like before, everything working out is just how she's decided things will happen. It doesn't matter what seemingly irreversible event has or will take place. Susie quite literally made a dark world just to see her friends again. She's willing to momentarily put the fate of existence in jeopardy for the people she loves. If that doesn't convince you that she will stop at nothing to be with them, then I don't know what will. At the fountain, we get another moment where Susie speaks openly. She says she has a stupid dream. That every day, they can keep being friends forever. That they can keep having fun, hanging out, and going back to the way things were, for infinity. At the end of the chapter, Susie wonders. She knows she'll do whatever it takes to make sure the ending never comes to pass, but the seed of doubt still aches in her heart. What if tenacity isn't enough? Whatever. It's late. She'll think about being a hero tomorrow. Thank you for making it to the end of this Monstrous project is finally done, thank fuck. Now I can go and work on something else. This was very fun to make, and I hope you liked it. If you didn't, please tell me why. If you liked it a lot, please consider donating to my Ko-fi or becoming a member of my Patreon. I'm Crab, and thank you for watching.